It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Mandy the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody! It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. How are you?
Sure.
How are you?
Pretty good.
I sense a theme.
Something like that.
Consistency. That's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm.
Except for last week, but that's a different story.
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I hope everybody out there is doing all right. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, okay, so my story starts like last Christmas or so. Back when I got the extended cut dance mix version of the third Hobbit movie on Blu-ray. And since I was not, shall we say, overwhelmed by the third Hobbit movie, by the Hobbit series in general, I'm kind of a completionist as far as buying these things. But that and something of a hardcore Tolkien nut. But so it kind of that particular Blu-ray set kind of went on a shelf and sat there until a couple of weeks ago when I spotted it when I was doing something else and was like, ooh, I haven't watched the extra stuff on that Blu-ray set yet. And if the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies have nothing else going for them, they have a shit ton of DVD extras and back matter and documentary stuff, and it's just, I'm just geeky enough. Like I said, I'm a bit of a Tolkien nut, so I'm just geeky enough to thoroughly enjoy sitting there for 10 hours watching that stuff. Unfortunately, my life does not allow me to do that all at once. So I've kind of been working on it for the last couple of weeks now, and I'm nowhere near finished yet. But it's fun. It's fun to see if you're into movie making at all, if you're into storytelling at all, if you're a fan of any of the actors involved. There's pretty much something for everybody. There was even, I'll throw one little thing out there. There was one, they were doing shooting for one very small scene. I think it was when the dwarves that got left in Lake Town were walking up to the Lonely Mountain. They're basically just showing basically four guys in dwarf outfits walking through this mountain range. Well, this mountain range is relatively high up and pretty remote, and so it takes them a fleet of helicopters to get all of their cameras and people and craft services shit up there for a day of shooting guys walking, basically. And then about 3 o'clock that afternoon, the fog rolled in. And it's hard to fly a helicopter in fog, especially dense fog. And so there was just all this drama involved with them having difficulty getting all of the crew off of this mountain at the end of the day. They told it better than I did, but you get the idea. It's that kind of geeky.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's that kind of geeky filmmaking shit that this thing is full of. And
it's got to be better than Cliffhanger. So
it's honestly, yeah, the extra stuff. Granted, the Hobbit movies, I have issues with the Hobbit movies, but the back matter for them alone is probably better than a lot of movies out there, because it's actually relatively well put together for a documentary.
And that too was filmed in New Zealand, right?
Yes.
Cool.
That's nice. I like that.
So it's pretty too, on top of all that.
Yes.
Cool. Les, how about you?
I read the first story arc of Black Monday Murders, and with the help of my co-caster Mike, I now kind of see what's going on. It is a somewhat confusing but most intriguing comic book to read. And we were discussing it earlier and agreed that the story is very engaging, and the artwork is superb. It's just amazing how good this art really is. I have a question if the artist is using a computer to do it, because his facial features do not change for the characters. Whether the character is talking, shouting, silent, or just in pose, it doesn't matter. You know exactly who is who in this storyline. And I've got a feeling I will probably go back and reread it before the second story arc begins. And unfortunately, I don't know when that will be. I think it's one of those titles that will take a month or two off. Am I right?
That's usually what happens with Image. Most of them usually take some kind of a break. Only ones I can think of that don't would be Walking Dead doesn't.
That's true.
Birthright has the breaks they've taken have been very minimal for
Yeah.
Birthright. Nailbiter's almost as consistent.
Yeah.
And I say that they're both Josh Williamson books.
And today, then, on a lighter note, I picked up my copies of Spookhouse by Eric Powell and Motor Girl by Terry Moore. And those are two titles I really recommend. Spookhouse is for all ages. Motor Girl is not, but it's going to be a great series. I can see that. There are so many different things they can do with this. Thomas and I were talking earlier. It's got humor, and it's got the main things that Terry Moore said he wanted in a comic book: a girl, power tools, a talking ape, and UFOs. And it is fun read. I will highly recommend this one.
Yep, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally read it. I was very, very pleased with the first issue, and I'm eagerly waiting to see where we go from here. For me, I've been working on some secret projects for the Fellowship. So it's some of the stuff I've been talking about the last few weeks. And one of them I'll go ahead and kind of mention now. We're revamping the website, a little bit more streamlined. Hope to debut a new logo here at the first of the year. And so hopefully right January 1st we'll have a new look. Those who have checked out the website for several years probably have noticed that I had changed it up a little bit this year after several years of not really doing much to it. And I just think, we're about to turn 6 or 7 in March. I think we're actually going to turn 7. So just a new look, and actually March would be our first year anniversary of podcasting too, so seems kind of appropriate.
Woo!
Yep. Also been catching up on my Teen Titans omnibus that I mentioned in the prior podcast. I mean, we are talking about 40, 45 issues, and the thing is part of it includes the 6 issues of the 60s Hawk and Dove miniseries, and for that I'm actually stopping down and was reading those because they've got them all mixed in between the other issues, and I'm not sure exactly why they did that, unless they were trying to do it as in chronological order. But I kind of stopped down to read those and then go back and pick up where from the main book was. So it's as I mentioned in a prior podcast, other than the writing with the 60s slang which dates it, but it's also kind of, it reads like someone trying to be hip, someone who's trying to write.
Somebody who's trying a little too hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking like someone who's probably in their 30s or 40s trying to write dialogue for a teenager. That may be kind of hard, especially in the 60s. maybe a little bit easier now, but since a lot of the slang that's being used has kind of melded into popular culture, so it's not as bad, but it was back then. So
But enough so that it still sounds a little corny
yeah, so
to throw one of those slang phrases in there.
Cool.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, before we get into this week's topic, I wanted to take a couple of moments to thank our sponsors for backing up the Fellowship of the Geeks. First one I would like to thank is Makefine Indie. It's a digital catalog that's available for download if you go to our website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and click on our sponsors page. You will see a link there where you can go. The fall catalog is still available. I believe winter will be probably January, because I think the fall hit September, if I'm not mistaken. But the fall catalog's about 180 pages. A lot of interesting books there. Some of them are not available through Diamond distributors. Some of them are even just available just online. Some of them have 2 or 3 pages of previews. There's some reviews as well. A lot of good stories there that it just needs to find an audience, because
There's a ton of good stuff out there, and this is this catalog is a great resource for finding that stuff. And the stuff that they've got, it runs the spectrum. Anything you can think of, there's a book for it in there, and a lot of it looks really, really good.
Yep, I agree. And also, we want to thank Things from Another World for sponsoring the fellowship. Also on the sponsors page, you'll see some of the specials that they are currently running. One is orders of $50 or more. You can save $5 off, which expires December 16th. And of course, there's the deals that run all the time, such as 40% off certain comics, statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nick and Dent comics and trades. A lot of good deals there. If you click on the images on our sponsors page, it will let them know that you come to their website through us, so it lets them know that we helped you find your way there.
Lets them know that they made the right choice by choosing to sponsor us. So,
Definitely.
we'd like to think they did, and we'd like to prove it to them too. So check them out.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, those great signs.
Yep. So thank you from the bottom of our heart for sponsoring us. It's much appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Alrighty. For this week's topic, I don't remember how exactly it come to me. And this is actually something I addressed before I did an editorial on the website, and we'll put a link on the show notes. Back when I was doing some editorials, I hadn't done any in a while. There's been a couple times I wanted to, but I didn't. So, but needless to say, we know what makes up the trilogy for DC Comics. It's traditionally Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. But there never really has been a definitive Marvel, or at least one where Marvel will present, hey, this is our Trinity. This is our 3 characters that kind of symbolizes the line. And as I said, I kind of addressed this 5 years ago, but I've kind of rethought it. And just for fun, I posed it to the guys, and I said, hey, well, let's kind of throw it out there to our Twitter followers and Facebook followers and say, what do you think makes up Marvel's Trinity? And we did get some feedback, got a little feedback. Thank you very much to those who did. And would y'all be interested in seeing and hearing the most mentioned trio was?
No, no thanks. No.
All right. All right. Good night, folks.
Bring it on.
And it's one that Mike and I kind of talked about before. It's Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. And Mike and I had talked about this, and Mike had mentioned the possibility of an influence from the movies.
Maybe just a little, you think?
Just a little, just a little. There were a couple of mentions of Captain America, Iron Man, and Spider-Man, and one which was Captain America, Iron Man, and Captain Marvel. So those were predominantly the Trinity suggestions. So, guys, what do you think? Who would you say makes up your Marvel Trinity?
I looked at it first from the origins of the characters. And back in the 30s, of course, 30s and 40s, it was Captain America, Human Torch, and Submariner. If you went to the 60s, I am going to kind of drop Captain America and put in Spider-Man, Thor, and Iron Man. Then you get into later, and it becomes Daredevil and or Punisher, things like that. Currently, yeah, by influence of the movies, like Mike has said, it's the three that you named again. There, I wonder if people are seeing the movies or are they reading the comics with seeing the movies? Because now you can say Doctor Strange is one of them. He's becoming very popular in the Marvel Universe. There was a time when Marvel would latch on to somebody like Daredevil, and everything was Daredevil on making appearances in other comics, or it was Spider-Man, or it was the Punisher. That was their way of expanding their readership. If you get a reader of Punisher to pick up a copy of Strange Tales because the Punisher was in it, then naturally, and I was guilty of it, you would pick up Strange Tales each month then, because it was such an intriguing story with Punisher in there. You wanted to see what else went on at a later time. But that's where I'm kind of seeing the setup for it.
Okay.
Yeah, and see, and if this was the 90s, then I would wholeheartedly agree with the Punisher being on there. He was freaking popular back then, and has maybe not slacked off as much as people might think, given his appearance on the Marvel Netflix universe, or whatever they want to call it. I actually hadn't thought of the Punisher. That's part of why I threw that in there. But yeah, I kind of came at it, I don't know, I guess through my own experience with Marvel Comics, which admittedly I really didn't get into it until like the late 80s. I can't say I've followed it real closely all that time, but it's sort of been there. So I definitely had to put Spidey on there, just because he was, he's been a mainstay, like I said, from the 60s on. I mean, I think there's probably always been at least one Spider-Man book, and there have been times when there have been seemingly dozens. And honestly, there are a handful at least of Spider-related books now. So clearly there's some degree of popularity going on, or at least Marvel thinks so. So they're choosing to invest a lot of capital in Spider-Man. I think we would be remiss without listing Wolverine. And admittedly, like I said, this is from my experience. And when I was in comics in the late 80s, early 90s, I admit I was an X-Men nut. And so there was a lot of Wolverine going on in my world. But honestly, since he was introduced to the X-Men, in mid to late 70s. I mean, he's just always been there. I mean, and he's been kind of the controlling factor for the X-Men. And the X-Men have been big at times. There have been a whole lot of books and stories and such going on with the X-Men, and they've been a big part of a lot of Marvel's big event type stuff. I mean, any time in the last 20 years, the X-Men has been part of it almost every time. And I mean, as we talked about not too long ago, I do tend to view Wolverine as the driving force behind the X-Men. So that's why I would put Wolverine. My third one is a bit of a cheat, I will admit, and it is very much based on a lot of what's happened in the MCU. I'm listing the Avengers as my third member of the Trinity because one, I mean, yes, you just can't take away what they've done with the movies. It's at this point it's too big to discount. But even before that, the Avengers have been. I mean, there's been some varying memberships, but the Avengers have been around a long time, and they've been a staple for a long time, and they've been very. Even when their lineup has changed, it's very consistent. They still do what they do, and that maybe has changed a bit with the movies, but not a whole lot. It's still they've changed up how they've come at it, but it's still pretty much the same premise. So those are my three.
Mm-hmm. When I did my editorial, and I'm trying to do this from memory right now, I'm thinking I did Spider-Man, Captain America, and Hulk. And the reason why I did those was longevity. Wasn't really thinking back to the 40s, but I was definitely thinking back to the 60s. And I remember growing up reading the comics, just even in the ads, if there was anything, it was traditionally those were the action figures, those were the costumes. All three of them were on the TV in the 70s. Hulk and Spider-Man had a TV series, and Captain America had a couple of TV movies. I still think I would go with Spider-Man because he is, despite what they've done with him in the last few years in the comics, he's still an everyman. I think he's probably the most relatable character out of all of them. I would still include Captain America because there's just something there. There's something about that spirit and all that I think is admirable. But I think I would go with Iron Man, and I think part of it is due to the popularity of the movies, especially the solo films. But I think but also he's another one of those that was right there from the beginning. So
he was also a good early example of the flawed hero.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
it really has become a lot more popular these days than it was in the 60s when he started. But
Right.
it was a novel concept in the 60s when he started. That still hadn't really become the in thing.
Yeah.
Nowadays, totally.
They're all flawed.
Oh,
They're
sure, yeah.
they. I mean that's kind of the way they handle it now.
They even found a way to give Cap flaws. Cap's supposed to be the super soldier. He's supposed to be Mr. Perfect, but I mean, he's a man out of time too.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
he's not he doesn't always get all of the he's not going to get the cultural references. He's not going to get all the in jokes. He's not always going to feel at home. He's not always going to feel comfortable. And it's going to color how he acts. You can even find a way to turn a perfect man in an imperfect world into something somewhat relatable.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to add one to it then.
Okay.
Marvel's first team, and that was Fantastic Four. Although they don't publish a comic book at this time, that one also showed flaws with the characters, but it also made you care for the characters. When Ben Grimm would face off against the Yancey Street gang, you wanted him to go over and pummel them. You felt for Johnny because of his power itself would cause problems around to those around him. They were there before the Avengers because the Avengers were made from individuals from the other comics. Fantastic Four, the first family of comics that I believe they call them, was interesting, and I may have to shift and put one of those in, put the Avengers or Fantastic Four in there.
You pointed out something that I was about to mention that I think is an asset for them is it truly was a family. It's not just because Reed and Sue eventually got married, but they were like the parents, especially with Johnny and Ben always picking on each other and being basically like the precocious kids.
Yeah, the
And
Avengers don't have that.
no,
There's no clear
well,
father figure there.
well, none of the teams do. I mean, they're allies. They can be friends and that kind of stuff. But it's not the only other team I could think of that kind of has that close to that kind of family vibe would be the original Titans or Teen Titans, which are now Titans. But even now, that's not really there right now because of events that have happened over the last few years with the New 52 and basically the team trying to come back together after having no memories of them being together before. So it's going to take a little bit for that vibe to come back, but it was a kind of a family, but not to the extent that Fantastic Four was.
I agree with you. Titans was tightly knit. The Fantastic Four then gave you Medusa, which opened the floodgates for Inhumans, which I remember reading it and I was floored. I said, "This is really good stuff. This makes me come back more." And unfortunately, don't look at the movies for Fantastic Four. Don't try to equate the two there.
See, and there is why I couldn't. I mean, I would have loved to put Fantastic Four on this list, but they've killed it themselves. I mean, and so you can't count something they've killed as a cornerstone of the brand, and so I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't put them on there. 10 years
Well,
ago,
then
maybe, but
with the movies that they had, I think Spider-Man failed badly.
yeah, but he still does. I mean, I don't know. I admit I didn't watch the last one, but that's mostly because I'm not a big Spidey fan personally, which doesn't mean I don't recognize what he means to the brand. But they're still, I mean, they may not be doing it exactly right, but they're still trying. Although, again, I think it would be nice if they would stop trying to do the origin. It's like they keep, I mean, they keep failing. That's what they keep failing at, is they keep redoing the origin every time. And I'm like, okay, how many more different ways can you tell the same story and expect people to like it better? What's the old adage? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Hello,
Yeah.
this is this is this is the real world. I mean, you'll make some money, but you'd make a whole hell of a lot more money on a good movie than you will off of a rehashed story. I don't understand why that's so hard to understand. But I mean, even given the iffiness of Spider-Man movies, they're still printing books, and they're still printing a lot of books. I mean, there's Spider something on how many titles right now? 5 or 6? at least.
Yep.
More than likely, yeah. Or something related to it.
That's a notable chunk of your published material for a month. So they're obviously still banking on Spider-Man, or they wouldn't be printing them. And right now they're not printing Fantastic Four. So
Yeah.
I got to give props to the Captain Marvel idea. I mean, she's one that you wouldn't have thought of 10 years ago at all.
Yeah.
And that character's done a lot for the brand in ways I think they never really imagined. So I put her down as an honorable mention just on sheer name recognition alone over the last 10 years.
Yeah. I had also thought about Captain Marvel too. I've also thought, because I've seriously, I'm not sure how much time y'all put in for your list, but I was thinking why. I try to come up with the equivalent to Wonder Woman, and Captain Marvel was closest to it, but and I don't mean just like in power or that kind of thing. I'm just talking about something that's recognizable. I guess you go back again to the movies and say Black Widow, but I don't think she's really that kind of.
She's not bankable
Yeah.
like Captain Marvel is in the comics. I'm not saying in the movies, but in the comics.
Right.
It would be
I
interesting to see
believe
what
that.
happens with that movie. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward
Definitely.
to seeing how that goes, how the
Yeah.
world reacts to that.
Yes.
Because yes,
Because it could be.
I think a Black Widow movie would be difficult to pull off. I think a solo Black Widow movie would be difficult to do. Because like you said, it's not that she's not bankable. Because I mean, at the risk of turning sexist for just a minute, stuffing Scarlett Johansson into that outfit is going to be bankable one way or another. But that doesn't mean the character works all that well by itself. I think I don't want to relegate her to a supporting role, but she's a background. She I keep trying to say this wrong. She is a character that works best in the background. She's a spy. Spies. Anybody who hears the word spy and thinks James Bond does not understand what a spy is. James Bond is not a spy. James Bond is a hand grenade. And Black Widow is not a James Bond type character. What you need is a James Bond type character in front of her. And what character that ends up being could be anything. I mean, I think Iron Man makes a perfect James Bond type character for Black Widow to basically control with the puppet strings. I think I don't know. I didn't think the Cap thing worked all that well when they tried it in Winter Soldier, but I apparently was very much alone in that. But I think she's just not. She's not what she's the character as is not going to work all that well by herself. There may be ways to tweak the character, I guess, but I don't know. And maybe they should, for that matter.
But in a movie, I hope that they don't make her Agent 99 to somebody. Just totally off the picture.
Right.
She has to have a part in it. But I agree with you. I can't see even Scarlett Johansson pulling it off for a full movie as that character.
Right, and it's simply because it's just it would have to be. It would not be a superhero movie. We'll put it that way. For it to be a superhero movie, it's just there's a big difference between a spy thriller and a superhero movie. And I think those are two streams that are going to be really hard to cross.
I have a question for you guys, since we're talking about these Trinities.
Okay.
To me, DC has a villain Trinity of Lex Luthor, Brainiac, and who was the third one I had? Oh, Joker. And I was also trying to think of a character. The closest I could come to that would be opposite Wonder Woman is Ares, and that's in the comics. Does Marvel have a trinity of villains?
Probably.
I, pro- yeah, I hadn't even thought about a villain's Trinity.
I mean,
Um,
Magneto, Doctor Doom, and
To me, Submariner fits because of his battles with the Fantastic Four to start. The
well,
other two are solid, yeah.
yeah, but if
oh,
you're doing it as a villain Trinity, then I mean, he's not really a villain anymore.
yeah, he's one of those that kind of teeters. I mean, he started out as a hero. They brought him back in the '60s as a villain, and then he's kind of been back and forth ever since then.
See, my deal with that is that there really aren't as many. And correct, feel free to jump in and stop me if I'm making myself look stupid here. Um, there aren't. I think there are as many of that type of villain in Marvel because Marvel tended to come up with new villains, and admittedly, they didn't always do a great job with it because they tended to try to one up themselves every so often. They especially did this with X-Men because once you get into like Apocalypse and stuff like that, it just gets weird, I think. But so with a lot of the like Luthor's been around forever, Joker's been around forever, Brainiac's been around forever. Um, Once you get past Doom and Magneto, and like I said, I know there are a handful of others that I'm forgetting. The villains get forgettable real fast because they don't ever come back, or they come back so much later that everybody's forgotten who the hell they are. And so, I don't know. I don't know that Marvel did a good job of focusing on the heroes and making them interesting, and so they never really had to make particularly interesting villains. I mean, but like, for example, you with Superman, it's really hard to make Superman by himself interesting. For the same reason it can be hard to make Captain America look interesting. So you kind of come up with villains that have a certain effect on Superman or do things that have a certain effect on Superman in order to in order to twist things around, in order to try to make things a little more interesting, make conflict more interesting. It, it, they end up the DC heroes end up being affected by outside forces more, whereas the Marvel ones they had the flawed hero thing going, so it could be an issue with like Spidey. I mean, yes, Spidey needs to go save the world, but he also needs to to run whatever errands he has to run for MJ, and he has to go study for this exam he's got to take, and he's got to do all these other things. And so you don't the villain doesn't have to be as big and flashy and pretty and interesting because Spidey's got his own built-in drama. He doesn't the villain doesn't have to provide quite so much of the drama. I'm not even sure that's making sense at this point.
Oh, it makes sense. No doubt about that.
So the short version of that, short story long, um, I think you're going to get more interesting villains in DC because of that. And so it's going to be harder to find a trinity of villains in Marvel.
I guess for the DC third, I would stick with Lex and Joker and maybe toss Harley Quinn in, as popular as she is. And she's an anti hero, just like, say, Deadpool is for Marvel.
Yeah, Deadpool is slowly growing in popularity. My plan was to list him as an honorable mention just because I mean, he's been around. We're talking about how many Spidey books there are. How many Deadpool books are there?
Just about as many.
Right. So clearly there's some bank happening there too. And I think it's given that there's only been one movie so far, it's hard to pin all of that on the movie. May not all like him, but he's obviously making them money.
Oh, yes. And parents are upset still because they can't have their children watch it, supposedly. They were not
Um,
able to take them into the theaters to see it.
they wouldn't get half the jokes anyway, so what would be the point?
Very true.
Well, I take that back. Some of them will. which says something about parenting skills. But anyway, this is not a podcast about parenting skills.
Why not? Let's start. Let's go.
Because I don't want to talk about my parenting skills.
Okay.
Don't you judge me.
Well, you know what? That'll be our question of the week. Who do you think makes up the villains in Trinity for either DC or Marvel? That would be kind of interesting to hear what our audience has to say.
I would like to find that out. Yeah.
Marvel villain, a part of Trinity. Would you add Red Skull?
Red Skull, Baron Zemo, or Kang. I always loved Kang.
Me too. It's just,
Yeah,
that orange flavor was it's just one of the best, you know.
Yep, I drank it every morning as a kid.
Okay, let's go. I'll say Ultron. Okay.
But no, I like Red Skull as a choice for sure. And he's recognizable enough, I think, to count. Zemo, I don't know, maybe not quite. He's not quite as recognizable, I think. I don't know. I hesitate to say Thanos, just because I don't think he's been around long enough, and B, I don't think he's been enough of an impact on Marvel heroes.
In the comics, yeah, but if we're talking the general public, no, because all they've seen him in is a few seconds in the Avengers, and then the little bit that he was in Guardians. But that's going to change here in another year or two with the next Avengers film.
Yes, he will be the major villain for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of the villain of, I think it was season 2 of the Avengers Assemble animated series, which I don't know. I'm not sure how popular that really was.
Okay, cool. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this week's topic?
Honestly, if I was going to throw one last honorable mention in for the Marvel Trinity, especially since I already set a precedent by choosing the Avengers as one of mine. One of the ones that I think we might need to start thinking about is Star Wars. Because think about it. A, what are the most successful movies that Disney/Marvel is putting out right now? And B, how many books are they publishing right now that are Star Wars titles? I mean, admittedly, they bought this thing like 5 years ago, but it's there. It's big. It's got its own ready-made set of fans that are now in there buying some comics. I mean, maybe not a hell of a lot, but some.
At least Star Wars comics.
Right. Which, hey, Marvel's still printing those too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
Okay.
Don't they? Isn't there about 3 or 4 titles for Star Wars at any time?
Just about.
Currently, as of this recording, we have Star Wars, we have Poe Dameron, and we are a few weeks away from the new ongoing Dr. Aphra, who's a character that was in the Darth Vader series. She's been spun off. But that's about it for right now. But they tend to do multiple miniseries, so at a time. So I'm sure, I hadn't seen the stuff for February just yet. But I wouldn't be surprised in February or March we'll have another miniseries.
Oh, I mean, at the very least, we'll have the adaptation of Rogue One.
True.
Well, yeah, probably late next year if things with The Force Awakens is any indication.
Right, well, yeah, like I said, at some point. I'm not saying when. I'm saying it'll happen.
Yeah, because I mean their adaptation just ended a few weeks ago, and the movie came out a year ago.
Uh-huh.
And
they were like 6 months late starting that bitch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I still don't understand why that happened, but hey, they didn't ask me. I guess it's been so long since they've done movie adaptations that I guess they forgot how to do it. I don't know. Uh,
Yep, it used to be that the opening weekend you had at least one issue of the movie out on the stands, if not more.
yeah, either that or they have the individuals and then they turn around and have it all collected as a magazine format. You remember
True.
that, Les?
Hmm.
But they just don't really do that kind of. They don't really do adaptations of current movies anymore, and I think we've already gone over that. Why I don't know, but yeah, yeah, I expect there to be a Rogue One adaptation at some point.
Right, and probably one or two mini-series spinning off of popular characters from it.
Yeah,
And then if they, hopefully if they realize the error of their ways with Force Awakens, when Episode 8 then when they start building interest in Episode 8, hopefully they will think to start putting some stuff out then.
yeah,
My guess is that by next summer they'll start, I don't want to say flooding the market, but at least they're going to add a few titles just to drum up some interest. It's the summer thing.
yeah.
Reprint A Force Awakens,
It's a thought.
make it available instead of doing
And
Chapter 8.
hold the trade until like August of next year, you know? I mean,
That
you don't
sounds
even have to
about right.
reprint and republish floppies. Just hold the trade until August. Because what? Do they have was it a December date for 8?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's
I
probably where they're
believe
going to go.
so.
August or even
Well,
September.
in February, they are going to release Darth Maul #1 miniseries,
Yeah, I forgot about that.
and then hopefully forge ahead and do Episode 8. Get that in. Now, as far as those go, I'm going to open this up. Who are the Trinity for Star Wars?
What time frame?
There you go.
There you go. To me, obviously, the Trinity for them is Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa. Now, if you want to say the major characters, I'm going to say Luke, Leia, and Darth Vader. Those are the driving forces for that series and have been since even Episode 1.
Mm, I don't know. The prequel trilogy. I mean, I think a good argument can be made for Obi-Wan
Yeah,
and Padme. I almost said what's her face. But yeah, I think you're looking at Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin. And then then there's always the fan theories behind R2D2 and C3PO. You could almost list R2D2 at any point in there as being part of the Trinity.
Well, both of them, yeah. Because wasn't C3PO created by Anakin in Episode 1?
Yeah, but he's comic relief. Now, let's be realistic.
Well, they were known as the Laurel and Hardy of robotics years ago. So,
Yeah, and C3PO, let's be realistic, is the most neurotic and socially awkward protocol droid, like, freaking ever. So, it's C3PO it's impossible to take him seriously, I think. Which, unless again, oh, there you go. There's your Black Widow foil. You need a Black Widow C3PO movie. C3PO is the front man, and Black Widow is the driving force behind it all, directing him where he needs to go.
skulking in the background.
Uh-huh. Making everything work around 3PO in a way that saves the world. That shit's money right there. I'm telling you.
True,
Call me, Marvel.
true that.
Go ahead and write me that big check for that genius idea right there.
Alrighty then. Anything else?
And on that particular note of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. It's true.
hmm Yep, say nice things and back away slowly from the crazy person. That's the way
Mm-hmm.
that works.
Your ice cream is coming, sir. Just stay put.
Just one more minute, please. hmm
I got nothing else.
Okay. Alrighty. Fun talk. When we come back, we'll have our weekly picks. And we're back. It is time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Les.
Number one. First choice I've got is Norman, the first slash number one. This is put out by Titan Books, and Stan Silas is the creator, the writer, and the artist for this. I kind of took this from Mike. I read some of the earlier issues of Norman, another storyline, and it just struck me as extremely funny as to what they were doing with this. In this series, it's a mini series that's coming up. Norman, the killer, is being tracked by his classmates who want to find out who the killer is. So the question is, will they locate the psychopath or will he pick them off one by one? It's just so intriguing to see a child version of Dexter running around and possibly doing in anybody and everybody. I recommend the first series, and this one I think is going to follow suit.
Yep, I like Norman. He's great.
He gives you hope, doesn't he?
In his own special way, yes.
Yes.
Cool. My first pick is from Action Lab Entertainment, and it's called The Circle. First issue of a, not sure if it's ongoing or just a mini, but the premise is a young boy who goes to live with his father after his mom's passed away, and gets involved with a group of kids who are actually in the occult, and they perform a ritual that allows them to be possessed by a force. And the only way he can reverse the ritual is to turn around and kill his new friends before it's too late. Very interesting premise. Uh, definitely, this is definitely going to be part of the Action Lab danger line. This can't be the all ages line.
If you hadn't said that, I was going to make a joke. Those definitely sound dark,
Yeah,
but it should be fun.
yeah. I definitely dig the premise, so it should be interesting to check out.
hmm
So the members of the new friends are members of this cult right now?
Yeah, they perform a ritual where they all get possessed by some force, and the only
Okay.
way, and he finds out the only way to reverse it is that he has to kill the others.
How many issues is this one going to run?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I,
notes I
I
have don't say.
yeah.
Circle. Okay. Very nice.
Mhm. Alrighty, Mikey.
All right, well, you dark, brooding bastards. I'm going to do something a little more lighthearted and fun. This week, I think, gives us the final issue of the current arc of Atomic Robo, which is Atomic Robo and the Temple of Odd. That's OD, if you're listening at home. And this particular arc is set back in 1938, and Robo is operating in the Asian theater, attempting to stop a lunatic from developing basically a super weapon. which considering that it's 1938, it's right before World War II, when honestly there was hostile stuff going on at that point in that part of the world already. The Japanese were already at war. I think that started in 37. But anyway, so this is Atomic Robo, so it's always a hoot. Robo is one of my favorites.
Woohoo!
Hear, hear. It's been a good read, too.
Mm-hmm. Very entertaining.
Awesome. Les, you're up again.
My B choice is one that Thomas was kind enough to give to me. From Dynamite, we've got Wonder Woman 77 meets the Bionic Woman. It's a first of a 6-issue series by Andy Mangels and Judith Tendora. And in this, Diana Prince meets Jamie Summers. And they join together to battle a rogue cabal bent on wreaking havoc and stealing deadly weapons. So the whole chase of the issue or of the series will be, will they be able to defeat this secret organization? I got a feeling that they will, but no spoilers. I think that these are two characters that have been in, or the publishers have been able to bring characters together to really make it work, with such as the Batman 66 with Stephen Peele, Batman 66 with the Green Hornet. It's a nice crossover for publishing. And Dynamite has done some previous stuff with the Bionic Woman, so I think they'll be able to draw Wonder Woman into this and give you that feeling of the time frame of the shows.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt seriously that they will have cell phones or microwaves, things like that, so this will be a little more fun.
Yep, Dynamite has been doing a bang-up job of crossovers lately.
Dynamite, bang up. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, didn't they not do the Star Trek crossovers? And like the crossover with Doctor Who and the crossover with Green Lanterns?
No, that was IDW.
That was IDW, okay. Well,
No, but they did the whole Swords of Sorrow thing, which was just a monster mashup. And
Masks
yeah,
with
Mask was great.
and currently with Pathfinder.
and they do Army of Darkness stuff all the time.
Yeah, Army
A lot of
Darkness,
that is
Xena. Yep.
Yep, they did one with Vampirella too.
Yep. So,
Those are all
yep,
fun.
they've been good. Cool. My second pick, since mine was apparently so dark, I'm going a little light here. From American mythology, The Three Stooges, Merry Stoogemas. Collection. It's a collection of new, and I believe there's going to be some old stories, and of course, just in time for the holidays. So, S.H. Check and Mark Arnold write, with Ken Hessler, Buzz Hassan, and Brendan and Brian Frame do the art. This ought to be fun. I mean, I've enjoyed some of the other Stooges books that they have put out, so I expect this one to be pretty cool as well. It should be a blast.
They were successful with the Halloween issue, so I've got to follow suit there. It's going to be fun.
Yep.
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's also the photo variants, so you got to get that. Actually, the photo, with all due respect to the artist, the photo variants covers are a lot better than the regulars.
They are fun, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Right. We can chalk that up to the fact that we're all Stooges fans too. So
that's true.
So.
Yep, that's
There's a
true.
certain nostalgia there. So
Yeah.
Okay, so who are the Trinity for the Three Stooges?
Curly, Shemp, and Joe.
How about Curly Joe?
Nah.
Oh, okay. Thank,
No love for Curly Joe.
Not so much.
thank you, everybody.
Alrighty, Mikey.
All right. So after my dark crack, I guess I gotta go a little dark myself. So I'm gonna go with The Wicked and the Divine. Number 24 is coming out this week. Um, and this is a book that this thing's been going on long enough. It's pretty hard to describe. And it's also one of those that if you haven't picked it up by now, I don't know what I can do for you. But so this is actually the second issue of the current arc, and it is essentially the gods are dealing with the aftermath of figuring out what Anaka has been up to this whole time, like for centuries probably. And I don't want to go too spoilery because I want you to go get this book if you haven't picked up this title ever before. This is an extremely well received title. Like I said, if you haven't heard of this, I'm not sure you're paying attention. So certainly it is a book that should be read. This is a big one. The title in general, not necessarily the specific issue. This issue I'm sure will be cool, but if you have not read The Wicked and the Divine, you should remedy that. That is my semi-professional opinion.
Okay.
It's an interesting read, no doubt about it. I did not get in on the first. I think what I need to do is go back and get some of the trades on it.
It's another one of those. We talked about the Black Monday murders. There are some similarities in storytelling style at times. It's one of those books that you're not always going to be sure what's really going on every minute of every book, but that doesn't mean it's difficult to follow. Um, to really get an understanding of it, yes, starting at the beginning is a really good idea. That said, if nothing else, it's some amazing storytelling and it's also some amazing art.
Cool.
Very nice.
Any honorable mentions this week?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
This week will bring us the Volume 2 trade of I Hate Fairyland. And man, this is another one of my favorites out there these days. I've talked about it enough. You guys know what I think about this book. The second trade is coming out. Go get it.
Cool.
I'm glad you gave us another light title there too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's a fun read. Yeah, but don't think Fairyland means that this is an all ages comic, please.
And don't think that the fact that the subtitle for this particular volume includes the word fluff, that there is anything fluffy about this book.
No.
Because there ain't.
I too.
Alrighty.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Les. I was
I was
about to
going to
ask
say
you if you
I
had
too
one.
have a honorable mention.
Okay.
There was a Kickstarter for this book, and the Kickstarter levels, if you went high enough, you got a hardback copy of this. It's called Tales from the Ackermansion by American Gothic Press. And this is a 200-page monsterific set of stories presented in tribute to Forrest J. Ackerman, the man that brought you Famous Monsters of Filmland and Monster World, among others. It's in tribute to Ackerman's centennial birthday. The project includes works by John Carpenter, Richard Christian Matheson, the son of Richard Matheson, Joe R. Lansdale, the man that brought you Bubba Hotep, and others. I'm kind of looking forward to this one. This should be fun to read. And a large book like that, I can't see missing at all. I think it's going to be well worth everything.
Sweet.
Yeah, definitely.
You sell that well.
Mm-hmm.
I try.
I have an honorable mention as well. It comes from Boom Studios. It is Volume 1 of The Complete Frank Miller RoboCop. And obviously Frank Miller is one of the writers, but Stephen Grant and Ed Brisson also are writers on this project, with art by Juan Jose Reap and Corcut Otsitinkin. I'm sure I butchered that. I'm sorry. But this is adapting the original screenplays for RoboCops 2 and 3 that were not. These are not the versions that we eventually saw in the theaters. Supposedly these were unproduced. So it just seems like it's a no-brainer for Frank Miller to write a RoboCop movie, especially some of the satirical aspects of the universe, like the TV programs that they were watching, and some of that kind of stuff. That's right down Miller's alley. So this ought to be a cool read.
I think so too. Yeah, Miller's churned out some really good stuff.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else?
That's all I got.
No, nothing here.
Okay. Any special mentions?
No, don't think
Okay.
so.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into our shout-outs then. First of all, shout out to Manny the Martyr for the awesome music that we use for our podcast. And Les and I actually met a member of Manny the Martyr today. Of course, we knew Joel, but we met Jason today, and it sounded like he didn't realize that we were doing it, and he was excited that we've been using his music, and seemed pleased. He's a comic book reader too, and it was really cool. I didn't get a chance to talk to him too much as Les did, so thank you guys for supporting us. Also, want to shout out to Potter Family, hashtag Potter Family, who's celebrating their 1 year anniversary the month of December. So congratulations, Potter Family,
Mm-hmm.
for being around 1 year. A lot of really cool people that are putting out some very diverse podcasts. Anything you can think of that hey, I would love to hear a podcast based on that. Go over to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Potter Family as one word, and more than likely you will find something pretty close, if not exactly what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Any special mentions this week there, Mikey?
Yeah, I will point out one podcast one of the Potter Family podcasts. It is called The Story Behind, and it is put out by Emily, who is actually one of the people who was. I hesitate to call her a founder of the hashtag Potter Family, but she's definitely been around since the beginning. And her podcast, it's a short little podcast. It's 8 to 12 minutes, twice a week, and she does some research and finds out the interesting facts behind something. The one that most recently that's probably the one that will trigger people a lot. Not necessarily in a bad way, but who knows. She did the story behind the Electoral College a couple of weeks ago, back when the election was all the rage. She's just doing some research, finding out how some particular thing works, and then telling us about it. It's a fun little podcast to listen to. It's informative. It's short, which is actually a good thing, because not all podcasts need to be hours and hours long, and there are some you hit that hashtag and you'll find some that are hours and hours long per episode, and I can't imagine even thinking about recording for that long. I mean, it takes us a couple of hours to record our 60 to 80 minute podcast every week. I can't imagine releasing a 4-hour show on any kind of regular basis. But anyway, again, you search up that hashtag, you will find a ton of great shows with great people who their sole purpose is to support each other. And so thank you to you guys, to the Modern Family folks, for supporting us, and we're going to do our best to continue to support them as well. So you'll hear about them from us regularly.
You're here. Thank you, Potter and Family. And of course, where will we be without you? Well, we'll still be doing this, but we do appreciate you being here. Thank you for downloading this episode and previous episodes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for keeping us from talking to ourselves.
There you go. We're always interested in what you have to say, what you think about our episodes, what you think about what we discuss. We're always interested. Please send us feedback. You could either contact us on the website. You can go to www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, click on the About Us tab, and there is a contact form there that you can fill out. Or you can just send us email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can contact us through social media. We're on Facebook, the Fellowship of the Geeks. We are also on Twitter, as we already discussed, at Fellowship Geeks, one word. Mikey has his own personal Twitter account, at Mikey Geek, and I have one as well, at Tom TC Geek. Feel free to follow us and just let us know, shout out, say, hey, check y'all's show out, and just wanted to follow you. And we'll definitely send a response saying thank you for the support.
Yep. If you need some sort of prompt or whatever, a question, as we mentioned earlier, question of the week. So let us know who you would list as the villain Trinity for DC and Marvel.
Yep, exactly. And also, if you download us through iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, or listen to us through YouTube, we are now on YouTube, and we have been 2 months now, 6 weeks, somewhere around.
It's been a little while, and it back uploaded all of our shows, so all of our episodes are on there.
Cool. Feel free to rate us, whether it's a star system, a thumbs up, thumbs down, preferably thumbs up, but hey. And if you have a couple extra minutes, feel free to write a review. Say what you like about the show, what you think. Just let these different sites let them know what you think about our show, and just let them know that you've been checking us out.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be much, doesn't have to be long or anything. Just a few words, just to say, hey, it shows engagement, which that's what they like to see, is they like to have proof that people are actually checking things out on their stuff, and so it makes those monstrous corporations feel a little bit better about themselves, and hopefully it reflects on us too in a good way.
Yep. Anything else?
I think just thanks, everybody.
Have a good day, and we appreciate it.
Once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in and listening to us. It's much appreciated. We love you guys. Until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,